In today's episode of the DIY Artist Podcast, I sit down with Carolena, who's a singer, songwriter, artist, and producer based out of South Florida. In an industry that is predominantly dominated by male representation, Carolena shines forth with her production abilities, coupling it with her songwriting abilities as well, to cut through the clutter of an oversaturated market, allowing her unique perspective and eclectic songwriting abilities to shine forth. We sat down and talked about everything from making an income and a living off of your music, pursuing what really matters, and whether or not formal education is really beneficial when it comes to being an artist and pursuing it full time. So sit back, relax, listen, or watch this episode till the end. You don't want to miss a beat. You are now tuning in to the DIY Artist Podcast, hosted by Nico Santana. All right, everybody, welcome back to the DIY Artist Podcast. Today, I'm excited to introduce our first, I don't know if I should say female artist, because at the end of the day, she's an artist and a great one at that. And I wanted to introduce her with a little bit more backstory here. Carolena makes music to fuel the party and your soul. She's a singer, songwriter, musician, producer, performer, and actress based in South Florida. She has an authentic, soulful sound as an alternative pop and R&B artist and collaborates with creatives of all genres and calibers. She's actually done a couple songs with my boy Mpax, and they are phenomenal. She has established her craft from the ground up through training and expanding on experimental creativity. Carolena received her Bachelor's of Science in Popular and Commercial Music at Loyola University in New Orleans while interning, this is great, with the Recording Academy's Grammy U program. That's actually really amazing. She's usually seen accompanying herself on the piano, guitar, drums, or ukulele. Her sentimental lyrics and expressive flows have allowed her to set no boundaries when it comes to connecting with an audience and adapting to all types of personalities. Her repertoire includes unique original arrangements, expressing her versatility and ability to perform and master various styles. Your most recent accomplishments are having received 5 sync placements for TV and film, which is a huge feat, being listed as a top prospect in Music Connection magazine, and being featured in NPR's All Songs Considered for her Tiny Desk contest submission. Carolena, welcome to the DIY Artist Podcast.
Thank you so much. I know that was a mouthful. I know, my bad.
No worries. We have to toot our horns here, and honestly, like, so on the side, I do like video production, and I'm very humbled at the fact that I was asked to do like a webinar series for women's like career development, and this particularly affects women who are at risk for like impoverishment and stuff in the Atlanta metro area. And one of the things that the leaders that was doing the webinar, she's like a senior vice president at an insurance company, she was mentioning how for some reason or another, women kind of silence their own accomplishments, right? And so to have the ability to like say, yo, I did this is what I'm about, like, and say it proudly, I think that's awesome and speaks large volumes into who you are as an artist and that you're confident in your artist journey. So more power to you. I think that's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So how long have you been making music for? What's like your, I don't know, I guess your tenure in this game?
Yeah, I mean, technically I've been studying music since I was about 11. And then I think actually releasing music, I didn't release my first song until like my junior year of high school.
Okay.
So I guess if we're talking, the difference between actually, working on your craft and training and studying, and then on top of that, you have the actual, involvement in the industry. So, yeah, so it's a little bit spread out. But yeah, I've been doing it for quite some time. It feels like, at least. And I'm really grateful that I took the approach where I studied first and I trained first, because that really, really has played a huge role in the confidence that I have when navigating the actual industry.
That's awesome. You have actual like formal education in music, and you have, I mean, internships, that you've done the right thing. Do you think that has helped your professional music career, or has it to a degree? And some people have said this like in different interviews. For example, I had a friend who said, yeah, I've heard people that have gone to like Full Sail, like it didn't actually like really benefit them. So for you, was the formal education route, was that something more of a benefit?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm definitely not saying that, to be successful in this industry, you need a degree or anything of that nature. But
Sure.
Definitely for me, it helped a lot because, I mean, my first 2 years I didn't do in New Orleans. I was double majoring in exercise science and music. And then I realized after my first 2 years, I was like, I think I need to if I really want to do this, I think I need to make a shift here. So that's when I decided to move to New Orleans. And I mean, being in school and not only learning, like, because the actual curriculum was exactly what I was looking for. It wasn't just songwriting and performance, which was amazing, but it was also business. It was also marketing and management and law classes. So things that will, if you really take advantage of the resources that they're giving you for this education, things will work out for you. But on top of that, what really helped was building relationships and connections. That was huge. So they would always have guest speakers come in and kind of talk to the classes. And I was right after I introduced myself and I got their email and I followed up. So things like that, you definitely have to meet halfway. You can't, they'll give you all the resources and all the tools, but if you don't actually take that initiative to follow up and connect and have something presentable, then it might not work to your favor. But I would say absolutely, being in that environment was extremely helpful.
Riverside.fm is the best place to host and record your video podcast. With insane recording quality from your video and your audio to being able to host a podcast with guests from around the world, Riverside.fm is amazing. I've been using them for pretty much all of the DIY Artist podcast episodes, and hands down, it's been an amazing experience. So the way that the platform works is Riverside.fm records the video and audio locally and uploads it directly onto the platform, so you don't have the lag or the buffer or any of the compressed video and audio issues that come with recording on a platform like Zoom. So if you want to go ahead and get started with your video podcasting journey, go ahead and use my code Nico30 for 30% off plans and get started today. Yeah, that makes sense. I think you hit it dead on with taking what you're given and then actually executing on it. And I've heard this said before, and I don't know how true it is, but some people, older artists, will say, today's artists are filled with a sense of entitlement. And, it's like, why aren't you giving me this position? I'm great and stuff. But it's like, if you're not executing, if you're not shaking hands with the right people, or even just showing some sort of value, like, what do you have to offer me? You know what I mean? And it sounds like you took what you had available to you and you're like, I'm going to execute on it. I'm not just going to wait for the opportunity to be presented to me, which, says a lot about you and your success as an artist and your continued growth as an artist. So before you went to Loyola University, what was the path there musically? Did you start performing? Were you already performing? What was that like for you?
Yeah, so when I first started actually singing, I found an interest in singing right away. But basically what initiated it was actually my last year in elementary school. My music teacher gave me a solo, and I was like, huh? What do you mean? I was always very athletic and I was the sporty, but I was like, oh, I never really thought about singing like that. And I guess she saw something in me. She pushed me. Long story short, from there, it ignited something. I immediately was like, Mom, I need to take vocal lessons. I have to. And from there, it consumed my entire existence for sure. So from the jump, when I was taking vocal lessons, I joined these little academies and stuff that actually got performance opportunities for us. So when they felt we were ready to perform, and of course it started with cover songs. So, there would be little events thrown throughout different cities in South Florida where I grew up. And yeah, pretty much, I started performing right after I started taking vocal lessons. And then from there was musical theater. So I also involved myself in musical theater. That got me a lot of performance and acting experience as well. So it really allowed me to kind of just go straight into it from an early age.
I know that, so let me rephrase it. My wife says I'm not from South Florida because I grew up in Palm Beach, Jupiter area.
Okay.
But everybody else says, from actual outside of the Tri-County area, it's no, that's South Florida. So anyways, I like to say that I'm from South Florida.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
The South Florida region is not, there are some acts that have come out of South Florida. In terms of the music scene though, did you find being in that environment more of a hindrance, or did it actually fuel your creativity even more, and have you found a nice niche of artists and musicians there that you've really clicked with?
That's a great question. Because I'm fortunate enough to right now I'm in a position where this is my home base, but I am able to travel when necessary. At least, as much as I can, whether it's to LA or Atlanta or Orlando or New York. Those are places, because you hear a lot of people say, oh, you do music, well, you need to get out to LA or New York.
Sure.
And I'm like, well, I mean, especially since COVID happened, everything has so much adapted to be virtual or remote, to where, and of course it took a blow to everybody financially too. So there's a lot of factors. And I personally think that you can make it happen wherever you are. But I do think at a certain point, again, if I wasn't in this position to be able to, have these connections in different cities and have friends to stay with in different cities and travel and make music, I don't know if I would be able to say that, I can make it all happen here in South Florida, because,
Right.
there is a really big difference in the scene actually too, even in each city in South Florida. So like the core of Miami is completely different than the art district in Fort Lauderdale. So I've definitely made a lot of relationships throughout the entire region. But in terms of, finding musicians that really understand and really get it and really see the bigger picture, I don't know. I do feel like sometimes it is lacking in that area where, I do have a very select group of people like that I work with, whether it's songwriters or, producers or even musicians. And you can kind of tell who really understands like what it takes, not just talent, but work ethic, so there isn't really people. I mean, and this is probably anywhere, maybe not just South Florida, but you have to have both. You have to have the full scope. You have to have the vision of like, this is not just, don't get comfortable, basically. You always kind of looking to expand. I mean, it is pretty rare to find that here, in my opinion, because everybody wants to do this. And the industry is so oversaturated, in my opinion, now at least, especially with social media and a lot of the resources people have. Everybody wants to do this and everybody wants to do that. But, you have to be realistic. Again, not only with, of course, level of talent, but level of, are you willing to work hard for it? And are you willing to see what it really takes to do this full time? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I definitely,
It does.
Yeah. So I that's what I've noticed, at least. But in terms of, building relationships and people who are kind of open-minded to different performance opportunities and different partnership opportunities. Yeah, I think a lot of people are definitely open-minded, but when it comes down to is the the realness of it,
Yeah. No, you said it there with, with COVID, obviously it's kind of somewhat leveled the playing field, but, I find it that, and you did this, right? You moved out of South Florida for a time period when you went to Loyola University, and you got exposure to different people and different groups and that sort of thing. And I'm sure you made some connections while you were there that have now translated to you being able to travel across the country and had a similar experience. That's why I ask. And I know that like environment is a huge factor for people's success, right? Like there's like a proximity principle that some people will say in the business world, where if you want to get ahead, or if you envision yourself in a specific role, like get close to the people that are actually executing at least one level above you, no more than about 2 or 3 or whatever.
Right.
And I guess, I personally just haven't seen that in South Florida. I've seen pockets in here and there, and obviously like depending on the genre and that sort of thing, whether like you mentioned Miami, maybe like you want to be in the Latin genre and that's like your niche, or maybe like Lake Worth or even some other areas in South Florida where it's like more like trap and like hard hip hop heavy, like Kodak Black and all those guys. So it just depends. But you seem like more of an eclectic, creative type. Like you're well rounded. You are not confined by one genre. And even my assumption is you're Hispanic, so even like not even doing music just in Spanish or at all, if in fact, and if that's what you want to do, like you could move through those genres and whatnot, right? So have you found that to be a challenge more so than like a positive thing, the fact that you are very eclectic?
I don't think so, actually. I think if it becomes a challenge or a conflict is really just, if we're talking, labels and like what direction do you want to go in type of thing. But
Gotcha.
other than that, in terms of performance and in terms of collaboration, it's been so helpful because I've now been able to secure and be confident in my brand and my sound to where, of course, you'll hear a lot of artists say, I don't want to be put in a box. But then when I listen to their music, I'm like, this is very, very much, and that's a beautiful thing too. If you could find your niche and find your crowd, that's great. Like, I commend you for that because that's important. Because sometimes when you can do it all, then it's kind of like, well, what do you do? But, for example, yeah, I have a few songs in Spanish, and I've been working a lot more, with just Latin collaborators too, because of course, being in Miami, that's just inevitable. So I am grateful for that because I can tap into those roots that I have. But in the same light, I've been to open mics or even just festivals or conferences where a majority of the acts are hip hop and R&B. And then, and they're using a track. And then I show up with my guitar to play some songs. And I'm like, well, I don't know how this is going to be, I don't know how they're going to respond to
like
this.
Received?
Yeah. And it actually ends up working in my favor. I mean, people end up really gravitating towards that because there's just a way that, again, from the training in which I've mastered my craft. And of course, I always have more to learn. I'm not saying I'm like, but just in ways that I truly believe that I've polished my craft and my ability to perform and captivate an audience that regardless of what kind of crowd you put me in front of, if we're talking live performance, I'll be able to, tap into that. So even in a place that's majority hip hop and R&B, I can still show up and kind of cater to that. Whereas, same thing if it's an indie singer songwriter coffee shop, I could swing that too, so it's a matter of kind of making it make sense because it can happen, having multiple genres infused in your original music, you can make it happen. I think you just have to do it in a way where you execute it where it makes sense for who you are and you're not trying to conform necessarily. But yeah, I mean that's kind of how I feel about it.
I'm going to pause it right there and give you guys a quick word from the podcast sponsor, DistroKid. DistroKid.com is, in my opinion, the best place to distribute your music, especially if you're an independent artist. For $19.99 a year, you get to upload unlimited amounts of albums, EPs, singles, whatever it is that you want. Besides being able to distribute your music, DistroKid comes equipped with a bunch of features that make it easy to handle your music marketing. For example, there are a couple video generators on there that can be used for all different types of purposes. Vizzy is a music video generator that has different types of templates so you can have your music playing and the visualizer basically comes on, plays your music throughout, and you can download this particular visualizer, upload it to YouTube or Instagram or wherever you want to upload your videos to, sharing your music with not just the audio but a visual accompaniment. So get started today distributing your music with DistroKid and get access to Vizzy using my VIP link, distrokid.com/VIP/Nico Santana for 7% off all plans for your first year. And again, thank you to DistroKid for supporting independent artists worldwide. Now back to the podcast.
Yeah.
One of my friends and one of the guests of this podcast, Terrell Burt, who is predominantly in the licensing game, like MPAX. He's friends with MPAX.
Nice.
He mentioned something to me which I've kind of started to reflect on in my own situation where, I like to tinker with different genres. Like I've done Spanish, I've done reggaeton, I've done like Latin trap, and then I come from predominantly like hip hop because I never considered myself a vocalist to begin with, but with technology, anybody can sound good, right?
Right.
So with that said, like he mentioned, in terms of the types of artistry that there are, if you want to make it binary like that, there's the label artist, right, who has, and like you mentioned, kind of fits in a box, prepackaged, it's nice, it's commercial, it's marketable, it can be consumed easily, cool. And then there's like the eclectic types, and somebody like, even, I don't know if you've had a chance to watch the new Genius documentary, Kanye West's, where because of the fact that he was so like out of pocket, like he was so different than all the Rockefeller roster, like he had such a hard time breaking in. And if he didn't have the production revenue coming in from that side, he might have made a choice where, okay, I'm just going to try to fit this type of person. But he already had like financial security. So it wasn't like he was trying to, he wasn't forcing himself to do something based off of, I need like the finances right now. It was just like, I want to do this because I love it and I'm going to be authentically me.
Right.
And that worked in his favor, but not everybody's in that position. So what I'm trying to say is that with Terrell, he mentioned that like, if you're in that position where you don't have as many options, go the licensing route, because there you can experiment with multiple genres.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to have one defined sound. You could be multiple types of people too, right? Because it's not coming from your artist brand. It's just a licensing thing. And so I don't know. I found some sort of consolation through that. Is that something that you've experienced with your licensing opportunities, or how have you kind of balanced the two, your own artist brand and like licensing?
Yeah, that's another great question. So I did watch the Kanye documentary, by the way. I just finished the third episode, and it was very inspirational. And you know, a lot of those moments really hit hard because you saw how hard he fought for what he wanted. But in terms of sync and licensing, yeah, that is something that I believe a lot of artists are really starting to understand the opportunity that lies there. I entered into that world actually through a group called Music Makers. So I write with them, and you know, they're the ones that really kind of got my foot in the door in terms of understanding what sync is, and because every album that they put out was per genre. So, you know, they would send me tracks and I'd be like, well, okay, so, you know, what genre are you guys feeling? Or, you know, but then I would get the beats, and I'd be like, okay, so each album is a different genre. So one would be EDM, one would be hip hop, one would be lo-fi pop, another one is Latin. So it's pretty cool that they do it that way because, well, number one, I feel like if I didn't feel like it aligned with my artistry or my brand, I don't think I would have maybe done it. I mean, because you hear a lot of artists, regardless of what genre they do, you hear a lot of artists feature on EDM tracks as vocalists, as it is, you know? So that was kind of how I was viewing it. I was like, okay, you know, I'm writing to some EDM records, but then it became, you know, pop and R&B. And I was like, definitely, I would see myself releasing something like this. But even in the instance, if that wasn't the case, I think that it's just a great opportunity to be able to experiment, to be able to, I mean, use that as your leverage, use that as your excuse to like, I really can write to anything, or I can release anything without confusing the listener. Because, you know, it all depends on your goal. And I think that the people who really ride with you and pay attention to your originality will love anything that you do. And even if they don't love it, there has to be a good reason. Right. So I think that the sync world is something that I will continue to strive for sure. I haven't yet actually sat down and been like, this is for sync, you know, unless I'm writing for a company or just happenstance, you know, I submit one of my already written songs to one of these websites, these third-party sites that kind of get you the licensing opportunities. Then by all means, if my music fits that vibe. But as it is, the music that we create, I mean, if it's really, I feel like if you create in mind, you know, a lot of artists, I feel, and songwriters create with a storyline in mind, with a visual in mind. And the kind of music I make, I always love to paint that picture. And if you do that with your music naturally, then you have a great chance of getting locked in with some sort of sync agreement with a music supervisor. So I definitely think the opportunity's there, and it can only expand you, truthfully. I don't think it could inhibit you in any way.
Yeah, and I would say it definitely depends on the artist, like you mentioned. Like if there's a one-trick pony and that's all they're good at, and they're really good at it, like keep doing that. Like I've heard time and time and again, like Rick Ross is known for doing this one thing. When people approach him, he does it well, and that's what we expect out of him, and that's his thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like there are artists like you who are so good at multiple things, whether it's instrumentation or arrangements or even just vocal delivery, that it's, you know, sometimes it is hard to like pinpoint just the one thing that you're good at, because you are so good at multiple things that I could definitely see that as an advantage for you. And like you said, growing in different genres and different styles and experimenting here and there, I think that's definitely a huge benefit to licensing.
Definitely, yeah.
In terms of, so now moving into like monetization, earning a living, income, that's clearly a challenge for most artists, definitely. Right? Including myself. So how have you found a good balance, if you found it, or what are some of the things that either are current roadblocks, past roadblocks that you've been able to get over, or things that you're just like, you know what, it's just not my thing, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to focus on this instead for my livelihood?
Yeah, so something that has been, you know, when COVID hit, I took quarantine to really get good at music production, because I'd always, in my music creation, I'd always thought like a producer, and I knew like in my head I was doing some sort of production, but actually learning, how to use a DAW and like a little, like to a little bit more of an extent. After school, of course I learned a few things, but I mean like really getting into it. That's helped a lot because now, like you just mentioned, Kanye started as a producer and then of course became known more as a rapper or both. Mm-hmm. Whereas, with the work that I've put in with production, I've actually been able to financially help myself do that. So as I've gotten better at it, I've had clients, I guess you could call them clients, or just really just other artists that want me to produce music for them. So that's one way that has been really helpful. Another thing like I've done is kind of like mentoring younger artists, or even like vocal lessons and instrument lessons, just because I have that experience. Now, in terms of that being, like you just mentioned, identifying when something's just like not for you, and because there's people that are out here hustling with like jobs, like, and then funding their music career with it. Unfortunately, like I can't see myself, doing, like, of course, if I wanted to, I would love to, I think psychology is wonderful. Like, it's something that would require a degree. And I'm like, sure. Another degree. So with that being said, there are ways to do it. There's websites like Sound Better, and, I think it's like Upwork or Fiverr. There's different websites that definitely help. If you believe that you can freelance, create a beat or create a track or an instrumental or record somebody, basically using what you have. So taking what you're good at and understanding, if you believe that you're truly proficient in this and you're worthy of being compensated for this, then put it out there. I feel like, if that's an artist's concern, is like, man, I don't want to have to work a 9 to 5 and be super tired, but make a financial income. And then the rest of my night I'm making music, I'm not sleeping, without it getting unhealthy at a certain point or draining you completely. Cause I've been there. Anytime I would try to do something full time that wasn't music or acting, I felt it. It took a toll on me. I was like, okay, well, maybe I have more financial freedom, but now I'm completely depleted of energy and happiness. So nice, yeah. If I could say, just take what you're good at in the actual arts and see where you could fit there. So yeah, I've done things like, vocal coaching, instrument coaching, mentoring, production for other artists. On top of that, I was with an agency, for my acting career. That helps too. Nice. Getting jobs, commercial jobs, So that's pretty much what it looks like when you're doing anything in the arts full time, where you're really not, where it's not an option for you to get a job that's outside of that. Or I would say it's an option, but maybe not your first choice,
Yeah. I had a chat with Ivan Calderon, who's here based out of Tampa. As well, and he mentioned that he's a full-time producer. He does like YouTube on the side, and actually I think YouTube is his primary source of income right now. Nice. But he has clients, he does beats, like he has his own workflow, but everything is consistent with kind of the general framework of creativity and basing it around the foundation of I am a producer, right? And then it all kind of like flows into that and out of that. I'm in a different situation myself. I definitely have like my life very compartmentalized, where I have like a corporate job, and I do that full time, and then I have this on the side, and then I've been making music for over 10 years in and out of jobs and stuff like that. So but I do hear you when you say like being in a position where you recognize your talents, the gifts that you have, and not only that, like your experience, and then being able to teach and educate other people. I think that's such a huge opportunity for so many artists. And now with the internet, like I'm seeing it happen. I've interviewed an artist or two who are making relatively good income, being able to teach other people. Now there's the gigging artist, right, who still goes out and gigs and that sort of thing, and that's definitely like an opportunity there for anyone who wants to do cover songs or what have you. But yeah, ultimately, like, what's your hustle and what's gonna feed or fuel the creativity? Because ultimately, like, we still have to have like a balance between the two, right? And for Kanye, like we mentioned a few times in this podcast, it was production for a long time until his artistry was able to actually like take care of him and his bills and all that stuff. So that makes sense. So if people wanted to like contact you for teaching or consultation or anything like that, how would they get a hold of you, Carolena?
I mean, probably email would be the best. So cool. It would just be like carolinamusic@gmail.com.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. I would say so. Yeah, I mean, because as it is, like I love to just help people in general, and a lot of responses I get, because when I started posting even those little videos on Instagram, this is how I got on this or that, like people were like, man, coming to me, DMing me, like not a lot of artists are doing this, because you also have to be careful when you're an artist and you're focusing on your brand. Like you also don't want to become that person that's just like, go to them for tips, because then you become that person, so it's a balance. And same thing with gigging. Like I'm very selective over my shows now because I'm in a position to be, because of course I could play corporate and make money, once a week, twice a week, but then I become the artist that's easily accessible at the bar. And so it's really just about the frame of mind and the way that you look at it. But there is opportunity, and yeah, so those are all great points for sure.
Yeah, protecting your creative space, and I've talked about that before. It's like you can't drain all your energy on things that are not efficient, and sometimes it's like not. It's good for the short term, but maybe it's not good for your long term game.
Right.
So that makes absolute sense.
Totally.
Awesome.
Totally.
Well, Carolena, I don't want to cut you off short, but I definitely want to give the audience an opportunity to either have you come back on the podcast and impart more of your wisdom here, or you even reach out to you and potentially consume some of your content, learn more about you. So I'll link all of your information in this podcast show notes on YouTube and everywhere else the podcast is going to be consumed.
Awesome.
I definitely want to appreciate you for your time, and thank you for your talents and your gifts. Keep doing what you're doing, because it's awesome and people are loving it. I definitely appreciate it. Any last words before we leave?
Oh no, just thank you so much for having me. I think this is a wonderful experience, a wonderful opportunity, and I appreciate you. And I just want to encourage everybody to just keep going, keep grinding. Absolutely.
You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. Again, thank you, Carolena, for joining us on the DIY Artist Podcast. Make sure to subscribe and listen where all podcasts are available. And again, thank you to our sponsors, as always, DistroKid, for making this happen. Much love, guys. Hasta la próxima. Peace.